Hi everybody, welcome back to Cinch University. I am your host Rick Porter, joined today by Anthony Archambault, Senior Account Manager at Cinch IT, and we're going to learn about how he finds success with the traditional sales walk-in. Anthony, thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to educate us on how you find success with traditional walk-ins. But before we dive right into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, Rick, for having me. So honestly, it's not sales. And so I came from more of a corporate type background. For about 4.5 years, I was with a Fortune 100 company, much more high level, managing retail store locations and so on and so forth. So yeah, pretty much my background.
Perfect. So yeah. Not a huge sales background before you came to Cinch IT, but
no.
The training and the offering and the skills you've developed on your own, you found success in sales at Cinch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very good. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to dive right into it. So today, again, we're talking about the traditional sales walk-in. And for any of you who don't know what we're talking about, the traditional sales walk-in is nothing more than canvassing neighborhoods, canvassing areas in your territory, and performing a physical walk-in. You physically walk into the building, you introduce yourself to somebody who's there, typically a receptionist or an office manager who happens to be sitting by the front door, and you're soliciting their business. These type of traditional sales walk-ins were so pronounced at one point and were such the main media that oftentimes now you see the no soliciting signs outside of all of the doors, which is a major obstacle, and we'll definitely talk about that today.
Absolutely.
So that's what we talk about when we say the traditional sales walk-in. So Anthony, I know the sales walk-in here at Cinch is kind of your specialty. It's something that you do very well and you found a ton of success with it. So my very first question is, why do you do the traditional sales walk-ins? Why do you think that they're necessary?
That's a good question because it's something that's grown on me over time. And I think, call me old-fashioned, but making a first impression, being able to communicate with someone in person, it's something about the body language, the connection. I'm able to be more natural. I think these are all components that are necessary, and it kind of gets lost in translation with all the technology today.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean that's...
So more personal than making a phone call or a cold call.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. So obviously, I assume you found success with these things. Do you have any type of statistics or anything like that that kind of demonstrate how successful you've been with the walk-ins versus maybe like a cold call or something like that?
Yeah, so good question. It's about 25% of my overall book of business. And more importantly, it allows me to properly qualify or disqualify certain businesses too. Google's not always upfront in terms of how they, govern the pictures of a building and what have you. And oftentimes I can disqualify with 4 less touches versus calls or phone calls, which is 10 or more sometimes.
So what type of things would disqualify somebody when you're doing a walk-in?
So, we have a particular Cinch model. So first and foremost, are they 10 users or more, 10 employees or more? Do they have the type of infrastructure in place that would warrant an IT service?
Gotcha. Or so if you walk in and it looks like a mom and pop shop, maybe they're not qualified. So you
exactly.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And Google can lie to you too.
Yeah.
And so you start looking at the building and go, oh, this is great. You walk in, you go, oh, they only actually rent out a quarter of this office.
Sure.
And so
and I've done that. I've Googled business that I thought I wanted to do business with and found out they were actually operating out of their home.
Exactly.
Basement, so.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Do you have a specific strategy on how you conduct a walk-in? Is there a routine that you go through each and every time you conduct one?
Yeah, so that strategy has grown over time. Like I said, I didn't have much of a sales background, but you want to be yourself. The strategy is focused now on industries or verticals specifically. You want to know about the business. You want to know about the industry itself and kind of day in the life. And so when you go in there, you're coming in with that attitude. When they know, hey, you know what, this guy knows a little bit about what we do here, I can just tell, they tend to be more apt or open to having dialogue and conversation. So I think it's an important component.
Okay, so you conduct the walk-in, you physically walk in. What do you say? Do you have an elevator pitch? Do you have a certain routine that you like to go through? What does that look like?
You kind of have to adapt to the situation too. I will say this, you want to prepare, but you also don't want to over-prepare. There in the beginning of doing my walk-ins, I remember I tend to say too much. And so you want to go in there, first you want to have a knowledge of their business or the industry itself. So you speak to what's typical within, say for example, like I use the example of manufacturing. Sure. You want to know exactly, what types of issues manufacturing companies have. For example, downtime or uptime,
Sure.
It's one of those things where you start that conversation, they tend to speak to those pain points naturally, and then you can kind of just dive in and just say, hey, well, are you open to having that conversation?
So you do just enough research to be able to start a conversation at least?
Essentially, yes.
Got it. Okay. Now, when you're planning for these walk-ins, right, do you do, what's your plan? Do you do one a day? Do you do an entire day of them? How do you plan for your walk-ins?
Yeah, so I plan the walk-ins on a week-by-week basis, typically, sometimes 2 weeks in advance. And it's honestly based on geography. So I look at my schedule. I take a look at, okay, do I have an assessment here? Well, if I am here, I should plan 4 to 6 walk-ins in this location, and then as I travel out, maybe another 2 to 3 in another. And then oftentimes if I'm driving, I'll cloverleaf, as they say, right? And so you're at a particular location, you start looking around, and you say, you know what? I know I'm focused on manufacturing, but this restoration company looks like an opportunity. So drive right in there.
Gotcha. So mostly when we're talking about planning, you're looking at what does my schedule look like next week or the week after? What areas am I going to be in? And then you plan what businesses in that area you want to go and walk into.
Exactly.
And then you mentioned clover leafing, so if you happen to be there and you see something else that you didn't expect, you also walk into that place. Got it. So when you're planning for that, right? When you're looking ahead at next week and you say, hey, next Friday I'm happen to be in this particular area. How do you determine which businesses that you want to walk into?
Yes, so it can vary. So the reason why I'm focused on manufacturing now, for example, is 31% of overall companies in manufacturing were actually attacked as of last year via cyber attack. And so with that said, it's an important component for them to not only understand and know that, but do they have the infrastructure in place, the technology in place to actually best support them? Oftentimes it's outdated and they don't have the support they need. They just don't know it.
You mentioned you walk in and you mentioned one of the things you're looking for is to get a name, okay?
Yes.
If nothing else. Do you have a particular objective when you walk in there? Do you have something you say, hey, this is what I want to get out of every single walk-in? And if so, what's that objective?
Information that I couldn't necessarily gather online. So for one, qualifying. Is there a type of business a good fit for Cinch IT and vice versa? Do they have a current IT company that they're working with now? Are they happy? If I can get these answers, it's great. They tend to be distracted on the phones and what have you, so you have to be delicate of how you navigate.
Short period of time to gather that information.
You got it, yeah. So you pick and choose your battles, So
makes sense. So, you mentioned they're busy, and sometimes you don't get to have that length of a conversation you want. Maybe you get nothing out of walk-ins. I'm sure that happens all the time too.
It does.
Do you have a particular leave behind? Do you leave just your business card? Do you have marketing material you leave behind? What do you typically leave behind, if anything? Yeah.
So that can vary as well. I've grown to actually ask to leave my business card. I used to just kind of leave it on their desk as we were talking. And so asking permission, I find that they not only take the business card, but they actually keep it on their desk versus just kind of throwing it on their desk. Sometimes I'll leave one of those foam hammers, especially if it's like a dentistry office, for example. They love all those tchotchkes. So, they'll keep that. And then, there are certain times where I can actually see that their mouse pad just is kind of worn out, and I'll actually leave a mouse pad with them too. And so, I don't try to go too overboard.
All right, so what type of reactions do you get? What are some of the common objections you see when you're doing these walk-ins?
That can vary as well. So it's more of the no thank yous they come up often. Sometimes I get shooed out of an office, so to speak. Sometimes they're on the phone, and I just got them at a busy time. And so I'll make it a quick 1 to 2 sentences. I'll ask to leave my card, and then at that point, I'll follow up with a dial, for example.
So the $1 million question, what do you do about those pesky no solicitation signs?
No solicitation, what are those? No. So in the beginning, I'll be honest, I avoided them. I saw that and I said, oh boy.
Meaning you didn't walk into that business if they had that sign?
Literally, yes. And so I've come to the realization that those particular businesses tend to be more receptive to people coming in because no one's walking in.
Really?
So calling it out. Don't want to ignore it. You want to respect, their request to not come in and solicit. So you call out the sign. You just say, "Hey, I know it's a no solicitation sign. I just want to come in and see how you vet your vendors. I would love to be a part of that process. What does that process look like?"
Got it.
9 times out of 10, they go, "Well, what do you do?" And it starts the dialogue. You got it.
Got it.
So 25% of your book comes from walk-ins. You've obviously seen a tremendous amount of success from them. Can you fill us in on maybe that 1, 2, or 3 lessons that you've learned over the years?
Reflect, reflect, reflect is what I always say. And basically what that means is every walk-in you go into can be a new experience, especially if you're going through a new industry. Seeing how they receive the information, seeing if they're open to having those conversations, you can kind of determine, oh, you know what, this was a good approach. You want to document that. Because once you start getting to the 6, 7 walk-in point, you start to forget, you start to repeat the same bad habits. So I've tried to at least hone in on my craft now to determine exactly what's the best value add when walking into this business or in this industry. So sticking to that is important.
Yeah. So my last question I like to end with all my guests is related to motivation, right? So you're doing walk-ins, you're doing 4 to 8 walk-ins a day, you're doing them day after day, and again, only 25% of your book comes from them, so there's certainly plenty of no's along the way. My question to you is, how do you keep yourself motivated to continue to do them on a day-to-day basis?
It's one day at a time. And so it's vital not only that you plan that week out, but you stick to that plan. And so I always find the greatest challenge for me is getting over that first walk-in speed bump. You get over that first hurdle and you start to find that flow. You start to go, oh yes, all right, now I know where I need to be at. And you kind of dust off the cobwebs for the day.
That's great advice. Anthony, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to educate us and fill us in on some things that have worked for you over the last few years. Especially in regards to sales walk-ins. You've obviously found a tremendous amount of success. Hopefully you also enjoyed the content. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. If you're new to this channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. We put out regular content like this that hopefully will educate